All right. So welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm sure there's probably going to be more people popping in a little late, and that's no problem. Uh, so today we have a guest expert, Molly, who is a dementia dietitian. I know you guys have asked so many questions on the Facebook group and in the membership about food. And there have been so many times I've said, ask a dietitian. I'm like, you know what? I'll just bring one to you guys. So we're going to kind of welcome everybody, and Molly's going to introduce herself. If you have any general questions for her before, or any tips Molly wants to share before we get going, we'll do that. Jump into questions, more questions, final thoughts, and this is going to be awesome. All righty. So Molly is our guest expert. I'm going to give you the floor, Molly, to introduce yourself and tell us what you're all about.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. I'm happy to be asked. Ironically, I'm wearing the same picture or the same shirt in the picture as right now. So thank you very
Oh,
much
so
for
awesome.
featuring that. That's so funny. Yes, I am a registered dietitian, and thank you, Krista, for referring to dietitians for people who do need help for nutrition regardless. So we're going to be your best resource, whether you talk to me or talk to a different dietitian. I think you'll get the help that you would need that way, rather than just going to someone who calls himself a nutritionist. I always like to kind of clarify that. We do special schooling and training. A lot of us have worked in the field of dementia for a while, which is how I got started. I spent the first decade of my career in dementia memory care, so it was a long-term care setting with a special memory care unit, and I have always loved working with that population. Now specifically, I'm working with caregivers who are caring for their loved ones at home, or if you have loved ones who might be in a care facility. I work with caregivers as a coach to help you navigate the challenges that come with dementia, because there are so many along that journey. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for all of the great questions. They were really spot on, so I'm excited to answer those today.
Awesome. Yeah. And as myself working with many people with dementia, food, it becomes such a huge issue, especially as you go through the stages. So even if your loved one isn't necessarily at the point where they're struggling with eating, this is still so important to take in, because it will pretty much inevitably come up as they move through dementia. So awesome. All right. Well, if you have any questions that you think of while we're going, save it for the end, because we will have a time to do that. All right. So our first question is, one of my clients only eats light food or very little. What do I do to get them to eat more?
Okay, that's a good question. And that one I was a little bit confused on. Did light mean like a little bit of food, or was it something like that seemed more snack items, or just things that maybe didn't have a lot of calories, which could be any of those things. Krista, do you know what they might have meant?
Um, oh, it was Marion's question. She's saying in the
Uh-huh.
chat,
Oh, good.
color. Wait, Marion, what do you
Oh,
oh, they only eat like white foods or things like that? That's interesting.
oh,
Okay.
okay.
Doesn't eat anything that's not, if I make the toast so regular people would eat it, it's too cooked. It has to be really lightly tanned. And she only drinks a Diet Coke because she doesn't know the color. Because I made the mistake my first day of pouring it in a glass, and she said, "That's not mine." But she'll drink it out of a
Oh,
can with a straw. So it has to
okay.
be no color or as white as it can be.
Okay, well, that was not one that I had considered, so thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, was this person, was that their preference prior to having dementia, or is it a recent thing?
I think recent.
Yeah.
She was a nurse and she traveled a lot, and they've
Mhm.
had houses all over the place. And so I'm sure she ate a variety of things before, but I don't
Mhm.
know that. I mean, my assumption is that she ate a lot of different things.
Right. Does this also apply to things like vegetables?
I've
Like
never
things that
seen her
need.
eat a vegetable.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting point because you'll notice as your loved one moves through the stages of dementia, things will change. It will not be the same throughout the journey. So this may be something that is just a phase that she is preferring those foods that appear that way. It could change tomorrow. It could go on for a while. So that is interesting that she wasn't, and it's a good point to bring up that she did not necessarily prefer the lighter colored foods before. And traditionally, something that is brighter, that is on the plate, stands out a little bit more. So that to me would be more, obviously better accepted than something that sort of blends in with a white plate. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. And I've never actually come across someone who is just preferring those light colored foods. But I
The
will
other thing
say,
is she only eats off paper plates because clinking utensils on china is too noisy.
okay, and that's good to notice. I think it's important to consider the preferences and adapt to those so that it's really going to be tailored to the individual person. And as we move through these questions today, I want you all to remember too that what's going to work for one person is not necessarily going to be suited for another. And what works at one time will likely change. So I think that's great if you've caught on to those preferences for her and you're able to adapt to those. And at least she is eating the foods, it sounds like, that even though they're light colored, she is actually eating and has intake of those foods, right?
Yeah, she eats
Okay.
okay, except she just started not eating eggs. And I changed
Mhm.
them and put some cheese in the other day, but she refused to even try them because she knows what they taste
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting. So if I come across anything else, I will reach out to Krista. I may have to research that a little bit to see if there is a different solution. But I think go with what works. That's always my suggestion, is that even though to us it may not be the most appealing and it may not be the most variety that we would initially or actually want them to have, whatever's going to get the intake and the calories in for them, we've got to just go with it and push that other stuff to the side.
like. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so something I was thinking of during, I guess y'all's conversations, it could be a sensory thing. Like maybe
Hmm.
she just sees like more bright foods.
That's true. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. It's hard. You would only really know by asking her, I
Right.
guess. But yeah, we'll move on to the next question. We already got some questions rolling in the comments, so we'll have a great question answer section at the end. All right. So our second question is the other client. I think this is also Marian's question. I was just copy pasting this. Her other client feeds most of her lunch to the dogs. If I can get
Hmm.
her to sit down to eat, how do I get her to stop this?
That's a tough one. I actually heard that recently from someone else they just love those pups and they want them to have some food. Is it possible to put the dog away during mealtime only, or would that be too disruptive?
I'm not sure. Sometimes they're not in the house. They're in the four season room and that works okay. But a
Hmm.
lot of times she'll just carry the food around and go in there and give it to them.
Okay. Is she on the move in general? Does she
Oh
walk
my
about the house?
gosh. I let's see, I worked Wednesday, Thursday. I never got out of bed. I was so tired.
Okay.
Every activity I tried, I'd say, okay, you want to watch TV? Okay, we go sit down, turn on the TV, and she'd be gone again. So then I'd go in
Okay.
another room and then outside and inside. And I was just, I can't keep up with her.
Yeah, very common, and this is a good opportunity to talk about how many calories and how much that increases her energy expenditure and what her body requires to maintain her weight. We may
Yeah,
not
I noticed
think,
she's getting thin.
okay. And that does, so someone who typically walks about the house, or even if they get up and down out of their chair a lot, maybe they're not, moving back and forth walking, but they're just, either fidgety or, tapping something. I've seen people who just like to tap their legs or their arms. That really increases their energy needs. So anytime that it would be safe for them to carry around some kind of portable food, if that is a chance for them to get intake when they're on the move safely, Of course, if there's a swallowing or chewing issue, we probably want to avoid that and give extra supervision. But someone who is walking about the house could burn an extra 600 to 1,000 calories a day just doing that. So
Oh,
that really is an increased need that we don't think about, and even just fidgeting or repositioning themselves or moving in some way really burns calories.
I didn't think about that. I did
Yeah.
offer her half my orange one day and she took that.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. So think about things like finger foods, anything like a handheld sandwich, something like a slice of apple, or like you did a piece of orange, or something they can carry. They're still on the move, but they are more likely to be eating that while they're going. That may be the best thing. If they like to drink, make a shake, high calorie smoothie or shake, have them hold it on the go. That could be a solution that helps for the moment.
oh, I didn't think about that. Okay,
Mhm.
great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mm. All right. Yeah, we're gonna have a very, very robust conversation towards the end for sure. All right. So let's see. Question number 3. Is there a particular way of setting up food for someone with dementia where it is more likely they will eat it? So when I say that, do we mean like traditional plate where you have like a couple things on the plate, or maybe like little snacks? Like what would you say is like the most quote unquote successful way of
Mhm.
setting up their food so they'll eat it?
So you're going to notice a trend here of me saying it depends. It depends on the person. For one person, and I think I just had a post, if anybody's on Instagram, if you want to join my Facebook group, I'll have a post in there that just came out this week that talks about the traditional meal setting. So for one person, a plate with, all the different food groups on it and a traditional meal would work for that person. Maybe for another person, it looks like serving food in bowls that maybe they don't respond well to it being laid out on a plate, but if it's in a bowl and they've got a spoon or utensil, maybe that's going to work better. Other things that could work would be serving food one at a time. And these are things that come from observing. So if you're working with someone with dementia, or you're with your loved one, and watch their patterns, try some of these things. So maybe one at a time, because everything else being there is too overwhelming. It's too hard to choose from 5 different items on the plate. So let's focus on one at a time, and then we'll bring the next item in separately. Otherwise, some people do better drinking. So I've had patients in the memory care setting that did not care at all about solid food. They could chew it, they could swallow it. They were not interested in it. They didn't respond well to it. So we went with what's called a nourishing full liquid diet. So a lot of drinkable things. So we just have to experiment and notice the trends and patterns. Otherwise, I would say watch to make sure that you're not creating an overwhelming setting. In general, a table is beautiful. It might have flowers in it. It might have candlesticks. It might be decorated well. There might be music playing. To someone with dementia, that could be way too much. So think blank slate, maybe not even a placemat underneath. Maybe it's just the plate that you have. There could be soft music for one person that might work. For another, it could be too much. So we just have to make some little tweaks and see, okay, that dinner went better and there was less going on. So maybe we'll go with that trend for my loved one for now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that is something a lot of people don't know unless you've been around folks with dementia, is that like things that
Mhm.
would seem normal to us is very overwhelming for them. So great
Mhm.
point. I love it. All right. We will move on to the next one. I might get like 1 or 2 questions in the chat after this next question, just in case someone has to leave early. All right. Question 4. What suggestions do you have for someone who is hoarding food or carrying it around with them? This is definitely something we've talked about in the Facebook group.
Mhm. This is a great question, and it's a tough one, because those items, and if you've noticed hoarding of food, there may be hoarding of non-food items as well. That can be an emotional sort of comfort to the person. So one thing I would suggest is to make sure that those are, if you can, non-perishable items.
Mm.
If we're carrying around a bologna sandwich with cheese on it, and they put it somewhere, they stash it, and then 2 days later they go back, that could create a food safety issue if it's eaten. So always look for the hiding places. If you can catch on to a trend of where they're being hidden, if it's under a couch or, you know, in a drawer or something, if it's possible to block off that area, sometimes putting a sheet over something, like if they're hiding something in a cabinet, putting a sheet over it so that it's not really recognized as the cabinet, that can help. Again, this is all very individual. Sometimes a bargaining kind of thing, where if you know you've got something that's sort of older and been out of the fridge for a while, let me swap you for a fresh one. So if you can kind of keep up with that, that would be advisable, because some things, I'm picturing yogurt or cheese or something that could sit out for a while, if it's consumed, could cause some foodborne illness for them. Yeah,
That's great. All right, well, I'll grab a question or two from the chat since
Okay.
they've been building up. Tamara, I'll get to yours first since I know you're not feeling well. Her question says, my loved one says he's not hungry and has no appetite. He eats a meal about every one time every 2 days and just snacks on nut bars and ice cream. Otherwise, he has eaten a meal, according to him. Did I get that right, Tamara?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all
Spelling.
good.
Yeah, he's eating like a regular meal, like
Mhm.
one meal like every 2 to 4 days.
Okay.
And then he just eats nut bars or a lot of sugar,
Okay.
candy or sugar in between. He's lost probably 25 pounds in about the last 6 months.
Okay.
Just says, I'm not hungry.
Right. Is it usually a question? Are you saying, are you hungry?
I used to. I usually say, I'm making dinner. Do you want cheeseburger or soup? I'll give a
Okay.
choice of 2 things.
Okay. How does that usually go? Is that are those 2 choices usually something he'll say, yes, I want this, or just says, no, I'm not hungry?
He just says, no, I'm not hungry.
Okay.
Or
How would
I'll
he
get it myself later.
Okay. How would he respond if you again, it's hard to not knowing your family setting and your kitchen area, but if you are you seated at a table for meals?
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you just took the plate or took a meal or food to him and said it's time for lunch and set it down in front of him, what would happen?
I've tried that. Sometimes
Uh-huh.
he'll eat
Mhm.
and sometimes he'll just leave it sit there.
Okay. And you're right. It may be a case of sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That's totally common.
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe he's more of a snacker, that he prefers smaller things throughout the day. Am I getting that right from what you said?
Possibly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I think we have to go with that. Even though you're saying it's ice cream or bars or something,
Mhm.
to us that's not the most nourishing. We've got to let that piece go. We know we want them
Yeah.
to have more
At this
variety,
point,
but
on just whatever
yes,
calories he can get in,
yes.
he can have it.
So in those meals that you are able to get him to eat, if it's just one a day, let's work on packing as many calories as possible into that meal so that we maximize what he's taking in when he does eat the meal. And I've got some good resources too that I could show you, but things like half and half whole cream, adding butter and cheese, and using whole milk when you make things, like really just making the most of what meal he is having, can help slow down that weight loss.
Okay.
Have you tried drinkable things with him? Is he into smoothies or shakes?
No, I've tried. No,
Not at all. Okay.
at all. Even like almost milkshake, and he loves milkshakes, but
Yeah.
I put protein powder in and that was the end of that.
Yeah. If it's made with ice cream?
Yeah, I made it with ice cream and put protein
Okay.
powder in. That was
Gotcha.
nope.
So he just prefers to eat the ice cream.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's okay. I think, that's his preference. Let's go with it. But yeah, it is difficult to say what he will respond to. Sometimes that pressure, even though to us it's positive, like you need to eat or it's time to eat, or sometimes that's just too much and they're like, back
Right. I
off.
have to say it once and walk
Yes.
away. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
you're noticing that. I think even just sitting something down, if walking away is what works, and if he wants to pick it up, great. If not, or sometimes people respond better to modeling. Like if you're going to sit down and have a snack with him, just don't say anything about his snack other than it's right next to him. And you just start eating yours. See if they'll
Mhm.
model that behavior and join you.
Okay. The other thing that worked, he hadn't eaten a meal for probably 3 days last week.
Mhm.
And so I said, well, when I get done with work today, let's go to IHOP. And he said, why? I said, because you like it and we haven't been there for a really long time. So let's go to
Mhm.
IHOP. And he ate a huge meal. So
Oh, okay.
that got some calories in him when he hadn't eaten for quite a while. So
Okay.
I
That's
took him
great.
someplace that I knew he liked and would
Hmm.
probably eat well. So that worked.
Yeah. And it may just be the place, or maybe you can use that as a cue for what to make at home. If he wants, IHOP pot style pancakes from home, if
Pancakes.
you can try that and see how it goes. It's just kind of a trial and error thing, unfortunately.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. We'll move on to the next question. And then Mary Lou, I know you've asked quite a few questions. We'll get that then answered to you next. All right. What would be your go-to meals for someone who is refusing to eat?
Hmm. Um, again, packing in as many calories as you can into the food that they are eating. So at this point, trying whatever they like, whatever they will accept, let's go with it. If it seems repetitive and that they're eating the same thing over and over, that's okay. We're still getting in calories. A lot of times the smoothies and shakes are the better options when somebody just is refusing to eat. Um, and this kind of answers some of the other questions that we might come across too, but really ruling out why isn't that person eating. Sometimes it's appetite, but so many times it's so many other things, other factors that it could be. So really investigating, is there a chewing problem? Is there a swallowing issue? Are they uncomfortable in their chair? Is medication timing off? Is it making them more drowsy or sleepy around the time when they should be eating? Um, so many other factors. Are they overwhelmed? Do they not really know what to do at meals? So there's just a lot of things, and sometimes we tend to blame it on appetite, which is a factor that definitely happens. But a lot of times it's something else that's going on with the person.
Yeah, that's a great point. I saw that a lot. Like, I think the greatest
Mhm.
hits was something and their mouth was hurting them and they couldn't tell
Mhm.
people, like something with their
Mhm.
dentures or something like that.
Yeah.
That was the greatest hit. Or sometimes it's just sensory issues, like your how you perceive like tactile sensations will change through
Yeah.
dementia. So, anyways, that's awesome. All right, so I will pull up Mary Lou's question since she's been waiting for a bit. All right. So she says, what about moving away from solid foods to soft foods?
Mhm.
Changed from eating eggs to ice cream floats, maybe eating floats at most 2 times a day. How many calories should a person over 80, weight at 123 pounds, consume? So I guess the first question would be like, is soft foods cool? Second, how much calories?
Yeah. How much was the weight again? I missed that part.
123 pounds.
Okay. So that's one of those things that it can vary from person to person, just based on the weight. Their height is a factor, their activity is a factor, certain medical conditions can be a factor. So it is hard for me to say exactly without knowing more a calorie range. I would say aiming for at least 1,500 a day would probably be a good general range for someone with at that weight right now. Um, what was the first question? I've like distracted myself totally.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So is moving away
Okay.
solid foods to soft foods
Mhm.
okay? Like that's
Yes.
basically her question.
Yes. You'll notice that sometimes that becomes necessary because of chewing or swallowing. Sometimes they will lose the just remembering to swallow. So it could be something that is physically wrong in the swallowing process, or maybe it's just that we need cues to swallow. But sometimes that downgrade to what's called a mechanical soft diet will be necessary. And then below that would be pureed. So think applesauce or baby food texture. I think what's most important is that it's okay if they don't have a chewing or swallowing problem. If they're accepting those foods better, totally fine to go with those. I do like to encourage that we make them look appealing and look palatable when possible. I've seen some things in care facilities, they just do the easiest possible. It all looks the same. It's ground up chicken and it's all white on a plate. So the more that we can make things that resemble food that would be in their natural state, like think scrambled egg texture, think canned pears, something that could be chewed without, if we did not have teeth, or if we just had dental work done, what could we chew with just our gums? So thinking of it that way, but really trying to find things like oatmeal or things that resemble their natural state, instead of just blenderizing them down until something doesn't really look appetizing. So I think that's something to definitely consider. And like with the root beer floats, if that's what's working, if we are enjoying that and accepting it, could we get creative? Maybe they want the root beer float with the ice cream traditional, or maybe we could, mix it up a little bit and do some different flavors, like a juice with some ice cream or some other variety for them, so it's not that same flavor over and over. But knowing that some people will want the same flavor over and over, it's just all so individual.
Absolutely. That's great. All right. We'll move on to our next previous question. All right. What kinds of food would be most important to give someone with dementia? So what type, like proteins, carbohydrates, that type of stuff? Like what types of food groups do we want to focus on for someone that refuses to eat? Because I'm sure it's easy to be just like, they want to eat candy all day long. Like, let's let them eat candy. So that's what we mean by that.
So the mixture, I mean, ideally on a plate, we would include some kind of grain or starch. We would have, so think rice, pasta, potato type meal or type food. Some kind of protein. Protein is very, very important, especially in older age. We lose that lean muscle mass, which is part of the process. So when we don't have adequate protein, that can contribute that and make that a faster decline for our muscle mass. So we got protein, we've got grain and starch, fruit and vegetable on there, and dairy is really important for bones, especially as we age. And I'm a big fan of liberalizing the diet. So if we think of somebody who is eating for heart health, maybe they have been told to be on a low sodium diet, or they have diabetes and they have to eat low carbohydrate. We're not eating, those things become not beneficial anyway. So let's liberalize that. They're not eating enough to matter to where that sodium becomes high because they're not eating. So liberalizing that as much as possible. And while we know that nutrition is important, without giving them just candy all day, sometimes that is what's better accepted. For that specific example, maybe we do put candy on the plate, but we have the rest of the meal there as well, but it's kind of alongside it, so that it's still an option, and it may encourage eating other things as well.
Oh, that's a good strategy. I didn't think about that. That's great.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We'll move on to the next question. I think Mary Lou had another question as well. All right. What are some reasons folks could be refusing to eat, or saying they aren't hungry?
And so that can go along with, I think one of the things that we have not talked about yet is sometimes they don't want to bother us as caregivers. That that's when that question comes in. Mom, are you hungry? No, sweetie, no, thank you, I'm fine. So that's when instead of asking, don't ask, just do. That can come into play because they don't want to bother you. But if it's lunchtime, Mom, here's lunch, let's enjoy, that may be better accepted. They may just be telling you they're not hungry for that reason. The appetite naturally declines. If our movement declines, if we're not as active, that can cause a lower appetite as well. But just in general, with dementia, appetite is one of the things that almost always suffers. And then don't forget those things that we kind of already mentioned. Chewing, swallowing trouble would be the very first thing that I would check. It could be that the last meal they didn't they didn't do well with, because there's something going on there. So we need to investigate that a little bit. And again, medication changes. Are they not sleeping well? Do they need a different sort of chair or sort of setup? Is sitting in a chair like I'm in that's hard and a rigid back, is that not comfortable? Like, do they eat better sitting in the recliner where they enjoy it with a tray on their lap? Just have to experiment with different things and not assume that it's always appetite.
Yeah, that's great. Here I will try to go up in the chat. Let's see. So, another question is, what if they say nothing really tastes good? So commenting on taste.
Yep. And I'm going to piggyback on the one that's above that. It says, my mom only wants sweet foods. I'm going to answer both of those at the same time. Taste buds really suffer as we age. So a lot of times something has to be very strong in flavor to where you and I might think, whoa, that is a little too much, whether it's spicy or that savory. It's called umami. It's a flavor that our taste that our taste buds recognize. That seems to be the last thing, but sweets is almost always recognized last in our taste buds. So if someone is craving sweets, that is par for the course. I think that almost always happens, especially in later stage dementia. So one tip would be, if we can make it as palatable as possible, some people will respond to having a little bit of something sweet on the end of their spoon, especially people who require assistance. A lot of the pureed diets, this was usually a good strategy for folks who had the swallowing trouble, that maybe we put oatmeal in the back of the spoon and then the end of the spoon has some jelly on it because it's really sweet. And so that hits the mouth first, and that is accepted and it all kind of blends together. But that can be a strategy, even putting something like sprinkling sugar on a vegetable, that can help them to also accept other foods as well. So they're still getting those nutrients. Yeah, they're getting some sugar, but it can help with acceptance.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many comments on here about the not wanting to bother. Let's see. Trying to scroll up to catch up on some of these questions. Let me see. Anne had a great suggestion of maybe you can put veggies in the blender and mix them with mashed potatoes or cauliflower to sneak in some more nutrition. It's a great idea. I think my mom used to actually do that with my little brother because he none the wiser.
Trying to trick him. That could go along with that nourishing full liquid diet that I was talking about. So to us, that may not sound appetizing, but if we're blending it all up, you can use things like chicken broth and make it like a little bit more liquidy, assuming that they're tolerating all textures. But try to make it as palatable as possible, but that may be something, especially if they're more into drinking things. Don't forget about things like vegetables and mashed potatoes in the blender.
Yeah. And also said some in our small group have been very depressed and or suicidal and aren't eating as well as a result. Yeah. And I think at that point it becomes less a food issue and more a mental health issue for sure. Let's see. I'll keep going down. Monica says, mom gets anxious and wants to go home because she doesn't want to bother me when I ask. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about that, Molly, about the anxiety around bothering or like I was thinking maybe involving her in the cooking process, even if it's her just like holding something for you, might make her feel less like she's bothering you and more like she was a part of the situation. I don't know, just a thought.
I think that's great. Or even saying, hey, mom, I could use some help. Would you mind washing this? Or, give them some green beans to snap, or could she set the table? I think, there's varying levels of ability so that they're still feeling useful. I think that part of purpose, especially in anyone who is aging, and I think that they sometimes lose that sense of purpose. So giving them some small tasks that they can manage, as long as it's not overwhelming, that may help them to feel more a part of the process and like you're not waiting on them hand and foot.
Yeah. It's I know there definitely been some clients I've had for sure in the past who would only want to eat with you if they felt like they were the ones, like, I don't know, like their role in the home was like they served
Yeah.
everybody. So they
Mhm.
felt like they couldn't
Right.
really enjoy the process if they weren't a part of it. I don't know, everybody's
Yep.
very different for sure. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh man, Anne always has some great suggestions. Um, Marion said, I had a client who wouldn't eat if I put too much on the plate.
Mhm.
Have you noticed that, Molly? Like people not eating if there's too many foods on the plate?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. So that could be a case where serving one at a time or just smaller portions. So
Mm,
they're, especially, if you're serving at home or if your loved one is in a care facility, having a smaller portion is less overwhelming in general. So if they're not going to eat that full plate of a normal size portion anyway. Let's make it smaller. And if they seem like they still want some more, you can always add more later.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'll go back to our main questions. All right. I just want to catch up a little bit. We'll get to your other comments and questions a little bit later, Anne. All right. Some people suggested to let them eat whatever they want. Is that the right approach? I know we talked a little bit about that
Mhm.
already, but is just having them eat whatever better, or is the effort to try to get them to eat more nutritiously a better approach and take the consequences of that?
I think if it's possible to get variety and more nutritious foods, then we go with that. And we still allow, if it's ice cream or if it's cookies or whatever, let's still make that a part of the routine because food is meant to be enjoyed and food is part of quality of life. So yes, if they're accepting of the more nutritious foods, I would go with that first, especially in earlier stages of dementia. You're going to find that mix of where they are more likely to accept some more nourishing foods. But then there comes the point where those are just not appetizing and they would rather have something else. So that's the case where we would want to liberalize and not really have any kind of strict therapeutic diet because that just further complicates things with not eating. And I think maybe in earlier dementia, you may have more of the likelihood of weight gain, but as dementia progresses, it will go down. So it's not always possible to gain the weight back once it's lost, but things that we do can help arrest or stop that weight loss. And what we can do is prevent it as much as possible. So that's the game. The goal of the game is to really try to prevent it before it even happens. So if that means that mom's enjoying a little more cake and ice cream or fast food in earlier dementia, that's going to help serve us well later.
Mm, definitely.
Yeah.
And just threw in some suggestions, so I'll just read them out real quick. Maybe eating with them would help if they're not wanting to bother you. Like say, hey, I made some lunch for us. Let's eat together. So you're not making them, you're kind of inviting them. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
I think Anne was commenting a little bit on like if you blended food that might mess up Marianne's like all white clients. Yeah. So anyways, great stuff. Let's see. We'll move on to the next one. Alrighty. Is a meal schedule the right way to go, or is it just kind of go with the flow?
A schedule is the foundation.
Mm,
So that is probably my number one tip, is to operate on a routine and schedule. That goes for everything throughout their day, bathing routines, hygiene, getting dressed, getting up, going to bed. All of these things are part of the routine, and having meals and snacks on a schedule are super important so that we're not waiting on, dad to say that I want some food or I'm hungry. Let's don't ask, just do. And it's time to eat. It's not, do you want something to eat? But remember that schedule could look different. It may look like breakfast, lunch, dinner for one person, but it might be like little snacks throughout the day for someone else. But the point is having a routine to where we're not waiting and we're just being proactive about it.
mm. Yeah, that's great. That definitely takes a lot of stress off for sure. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What changes happen with dementia and food? So I know we were mentioning like some sensory changes or things like that. Like what are some changes you've seen that happen as someone moves through the stages.
Definitely that likes and dislikes will change. I will often hear that, mom used to love these foods and now she just totally is not into them. So things will drastically change where maybe somebody ate really healthfully their entire life and now their family is shocked because all they want is the sweets, or they want, chips or different things that we would consider less healthful options that they really stayed away from. So things can change drastically as far as preferences go. So I think it's important to really be aware of those. Also, the texture changes and what we tolerate as we age in general, but especially with dementia, there's a lot of different textures that are difficult. So if you're concerned about that, I would ask for an evaluation by a speech therapist to evaluate chewing and swallowing. They can do both. That way you're safest for your loved one.
Yeah. So I know there's a little bit, I guess, circling back to the schedule thing, there's some concerns of like, if there's refusals going on, it could mess up your well-laid plans there. Like, have you seen like just like maybe having some food like out, like something in a cookie jar, like something in a bowl or something for them to kind of grab, work for some folks?
Yes, absolutely. I think, especially if you've got someone who walks about the house or in that sort of hiding and hoarding situation, making sure that the food is always available for them to get. That way it's out for them. They may be more likely, and it's that pressure thing too, where nobody's pressuring them, but that food is just sitting out, or there's a plate, with some crackers or cheese, and again, with the food safety, be careful about that. But anything that they could get on their own, again, that's independence. I'm a big fan of maintaining independence and helping them to have that as they move through their journey.
Yeah. So maybe just the schedule is less about like them knowing the schedule and more about like yourself knowing the schedule, just so that you don't have to drive yourself nuts announcing time. It's just something, it's like, all right, I'm gonna put the food out, that type of stuff around like X time. Yeah. Definitely. But I still agree with you on the schedule thing, even if the schedule's not something that works telling them about. It's just sometimes you have it for yourself. Just keep yourself sane.
Yep. Nobody else needs to know about it. As long as you're offering routinely, that's the key.
Awesome. All right, let's see. All right, so I think this is the last pre-question. Is weight loss normal for someone with dementia, and is weight gain normal? So I know we touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, weight gain is more common in early stages of dementia, and the weight loss typically happens in mid to late stages. So the more we can be proactive, the better. And with the weight gain, I wanted to mention this before. If it's an issue of impacting care, like if someone is not mobile and they need to be transferred, the weight gain can matter. So we don't want to, we want to try to maybe prevent some of that weight gain in those individuals who would need care, and it would be complicating the care. But I think eventually the weight will start to change and the appetite will differ. So I'm not too concerned about weight gain in early stages.
Okay, great. So we'll circle back to some of the questions here because we got to the end of our pre-questions. Monica says, what about being a dementia dietitian has impacted you the most about the disease? I'm not sure if I understand the question, Monica. Would you be able to specify that a little bit more?
I guess just in general for I'm sorry, for Molly, what or not Maria, I'm sorry, for our speaker. Oh my gosh,
It's
why did I
Molly.
just blank on
No,
your
you got
name?
it.
It's
You
Molly.
got it.
Okay,
You
I'm
got
like,
it.
wait, am I saying?
Yeah, you got it.
Sorry.
You got it.
Lot going on. Just for Molly, just curious what the disease and or dementia that has impacted you the most, whether it was maybe being able to eat certain foods before it progressed drastically, or whether any foods in general were best for patients. And I guess maybe I'm speaking more about prior to the disease getting I guess where most of our loved ones are at, where it's progressed.
So am I understanding right? You're asking maybe what would be most impactful to do or to feed, how to nourish early stages
Correct.
later?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
That's
mean
okay.
to make it so complicated.
That's okay. Well, if we think about nourishment in anyone, in ourselves, nourishment provides energy for the day. It helps us to feel good. So I think the more that we can concentrate on giving a good variety of different food groups and carbs and protein and fat and providing that in early dementia, if it's accepted, let's do, you know, as much of that as possible. It may help to lessen other things and how they feel during their day because they are nourished well. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but I feel like that's maybe what you're asking.
Yeah, no, definitely. I guess too, because, you know, caring for my mom, and I'm might be prone to the disease, and just, you know, what could possibly help in the future.
I hope y'all can't hear my dog. I have a puppy and she's going crazy downstairs. I knew what you're asking now. The mind diet, and I do talk a lot about this, well, some about this on my page, but I think, well, I know that research is being done on what we do now as younger folks who may not, you know, have symptoms of dementia. Yet what we do now does impact our risk for cognitive decline. So there are many things. You can look it up, the Mind Diet, or if you want to look on Instagram or Facebook, I have some info on it, including whole grains, eating greens and vegetables daily, eating less sugar, eating things like berries and blueberries, and really more of that Mediterranean style of eating that, even when it's followed moderately, can help to prevent or delay cognitive decline. So if anyone is like myself, my grandmother had dementia, and I am concerned that that would be part of my future. So really trying to include those foods as much as possible throughout our life could help prevent that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So I think Jaimie's going to help us out I think you mentioned your website and resources. So we want to give people a chance to take a look at that. So Jaimie's going to call up your website to show everybody. All right. Let's see.
Should be up now.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, let me get rid of this. Sorry about that. And I put some questions in there for you, Krista, if you wanted to ask Molly, if you can see them in the
Perfect.
chat.
Yeah, I got it. All right. So of course, if anybody else has any questions, you can put in the chat and we'll ask her. But how can everybody get in touch with you? I guess moving forward. And I know Jaimie's showing your website. I know I personally found you on your Instagram page. So I guess I'll give you a chance to share that with everybody if they want to find you or some of the Mediterranean diet resources you just talked about.
Yeah, that's great. So the website is mollyrobinsonnutrition.com. You can actually find the links for the Facebook group or my Facebook page, and also the Instagram at the top there where he's showing you. But if you're on Instagram, it is dementia.nutritionist. And that will also connect you if you see that little
the link
campsite bio, that will direct you to the website too.
Great. And if some of us wanted to work with you a little bit more, how would they be able to do that, to maybe have time to delve more specifically into their situation?
Absolutely. I think personalized care is the key, especially in caring for your loved ones with dementia. I do offer packages for coaching, but we could have a free chat, 20-minute call, 20, 30 minutes, whatever you have time for, just to learn a little bit more to see if we would be right to work together and if I'm able to help you. But that really is my passion, to help you navigate the changes, because it's so individual, and I really believe in personalized care. So you can get through the website. You could get in touch with me if you're on Instagram. That link will also take you to a coaching application where I can learn your contact info and learn a little bit more about your situation.
Great. All right. And I know we touched, I guess, briefly on your background, I guess maybe for those who showed up a little later as well. I know I just mentioned you had been a dietitian for 18 years. Is there anything else, I guess, about your background that you would want to share with us, or for those who came in late?
Sure. So like I was saying, I started my career in long-term care with memory care for a full 10 years, and it felt like such a natural fit. I was very close to my grandparents growing up, and then I realized quickly that at that point, I had not had much experience in people with dementia, and I just really enjoyed being able to help nourish them and learned all these strategies along the way. And in that time, my grandmother developed dementia herself. So it's a lot different when you go through it, professionally and then personally, you get to see that. So I think it's just a passion that I have, and I realize there's a gap in the care for you as caregivers at home. So if I'm able to help you, I would love to, and I invite you to just reach out and we'll have a conversation.
Great. Here, you can unshare your screen. There you go. All right, perfect. All right. Let's see. So yeah, again, if you guys just want to reach out and view some of her free content on Instagram and her website, her Facebook group, that's all out there. If you are really in a position where you're just like, I would love to get that more personalized coaching, more time with her, now you know where to reach her. Does anybody else have any other questions for Molly before we wrap up? Oh, I see Laura had a suggestion of she found the little snack packs at Costco, cheese, raisins, nuts, crackers, very handy for small portions. That's good. All right. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
So feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, just kind of pop up. And well, I guess while people are thinking too, I did have a question for you, Molly. I was just wondering, it seems like with the personal coaching, especially as a lot of our members are, getting more into the late stages of their caregiving. I was just wondering, what point do you normally have people come to you for coaching, and when is that, I guess, come most in handy? And that was kind of my line of questioning.
I think it's more typical in early stages to get prepared for what that journey might look like. But typically when someone starts to have those issues of appetite and not eating, which can happen early dementia, but more like mid stages. And my caregivers who are at home, it typically is the mid stage of the process.
Awesome. And thank you for being here too. I think a lot of people in the chat are saying how much they got out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Tamara said very helpful, Molly. Thank you so much. Appreciate your help, info and resources. That's so awesome. Yeah. And like I said at the beginning, this is going to be posted in the member space as well as for our general folks. So again, if you do not want your name or your image shown whatsoever, please let me know so I can edit it out before I put it out into the world. So I want to obviously protect your privacy. That is like my number one thing. So with all that being said, I think we will close out. Again, Molly, thank you so much for joining us. If you guys have any last second, like you think of a question, like, I don't know, tonight or something, just email me and I'll shoot it to Molly. And anyways, great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Everyone's questions were really great, and I was glad to have a chance to hopefully help in some way. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.